Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. I'm Mitchell Kaminsky. This is the Pinwheels pregame show, bringing you White Sox talk every Wednesday at noon. Well, we got another doozy of a Chris Getz quote this week. It got me thinking. So over the weekend, I was at the Nebraska-Colorado game and watched the Cornhuskers kick the crap out of that Colorado team. It's an electric environment. So happy Nebraska football is back. But after the game, Shedeur Sanders was in the locker room and his offensive line played really poorly. But as a quarterback, you're the leader of the team. You're trying to get people to follow you. You're trying to inspire confidence in your guys. Did he do that? No, not really. He just kind of played the blame game, threw the offensive line essentially under the bus. Was it their fault? Absolutely. But sometimes, quarterback, leader of the team, you got to take some accountability. And that is exactly how I feel about Chris Getz this week after listening to him meet the media on Monday, just hours before the White Sox lost yet another game. Their home losing streak is now at 14 games. They have lost 14 consecutive games at home. That is a new franchise record. They are now only 7 games away from breaking the modern-day MLB record. And looking at the schedule, they're going to have to go about 500 if they want to avoid that. I think they got 15 games left. I don't see any way that is possible. Getz was asked about the potential of becoming a historically bad team and being the man in charge of putting that together. And this is what he had to say. Now, this is the same guy. Now, we'll preface this before we get into this quote. He was not given a great situation to inherit. All right. I mean, it wasn't. The team had lost 105 games last year. They had a lot of aging veterans. They just traded away a lot of guys. Wasn't a great situation. He came out in the offseason and said during the GM meetings back in November, I don't like our team. We've got to make some adjustments so we improve for 2024. Those adjustments he wanted to make included being more athletic and better defensively. We talked about this ad nauseum. Oh, yeah, we got to get better defensively so pitchers will want to come here because we had a tough time signing free agent pitchers. So he did make a lot of moves during this offseason. But we'll get into those in just a second. Here's what he had to say when asked about flirting with the worst record in history. And he said, quote, I think if you would have told me we were going to end up flirting with the record, I would have been a little surprised. Now, if you would have told me prior to the year that we would have ended up with over 100 losses, 105, 110, I wouldn't have been a surprise. But this is the cards that we've been dealt at this point. You try to make the best of it, and I think it's an opportunity to embrace the situation we're in. Now, the cards comment stands out to me. This is the cards that we have been dealt. No. You haven't been dealt anything. You can't complain about the cards you're dealt when you are literally the one controlling the deck. And you also had a pretty good opportunity to get the layout of what that deck looks like beforehand at 7 years as the farm director. This roster was completely overhauled this offseason. So you can't complain about cards you were dealt. I had a stat today. The White Sox this year have used the most pitchers they have in their franchise's history. I think they said they have used, let me pull this up here. It was over like, it was like over 60. And he added also 20 new guys to the 40-man roster. Where is the oh man, I lost. Oh, here we go. Did I have I can't find. I'll pull that up later. But they've used more pitchers this year than they have in any other season in the White Sox history. Now, over the offseason, too, he made a handful of moves. He added over 20 players to the 40-man roster. That has included his first big one that a lot of Sox fans like, because I remember I wrote about this, was trading Aaron Bummer. By the way, take a look at what Aaron Bummer's doing right now, former Nebraska Cornhusker. Shout out Aaron Bummer. Well, a lot of White Sox fans didn't like him, but he was a lot better than people gave him credit for. I know he had some bad numbers with the White Sox, and he was frustrating to watch at times, but he induced a lot of soft contact. He struck out a lot of guys, and he ran into a lot of bad luck. He's pitching pretty damn well for the Braves. We got 5 guys back in that return. Most of the 5 are probably going to get DFA'd. Mike Soroka is no longer in the starting rotation. The one guy, Brandon Shoemake, he played he didn't even last a month before getting sent down to AAA. He has yet to return. Nicky Lopez, he's been pretty solid. I think he's the best player they've gotten out of that trade. But that trade was a disaster. And then you go to some of his free agent signings. He signed Paul DeYoung. He signed Eric Fed. They also added Tim Hill, Chris Flexen, Martin Maldonado, John Brebbia, Jesse Chavez, Corey Knebel, Dominic Leone, Brian Shaw, infielder Mike Moustakas, Kevin Pillar, Max Stassi, Dominic Fletcher, and then Zach Deloach. Those two were added in the trade. And then his biggest move after that, right before the season, they traded Dylan Cease to the Padres, obviously. You got that return with Drew Thorpe, top 100 prospect at the time, Steven Wilson, and then also fellow prospects Jairo Iriarte and Samuel Zavala. And then they also added Tommy Pham. Just want to remind you of how all those moves that have worked out that Chris has had, because he's talking about how bad this deck is, because the success rate on these has been very, very troubling. Chavez and Moustakas and Brian Shaw, who he also signed, they all failed to make the team. Shoemake played 29 games after he made the opening day roster, played 29 games. They were like, yeah, that's enough of you. He has not, he hasn't returned since. Corey Knebel was released. Kevin Pillar, Tim Hill, Martin Maldonado, John Brebbia, they were all DFA'd. Max Stassi, he's yet to play a game for the White Sox. Deloach has only appeared in 13 games. Dominic Leone, he posted a near 7 ERA. He's now out for the season. Wilson owns a 5.71 ERA. And Chris Flexen, also an ERA creeping up to 6. Interesting note about Chris Flexen that I found interesting before we get back into ripping guests. He set a new record. The White Sox actually snapped this streak, their win the other day, against Boston when he had started. But prior to that game, before winning that game up in Boston, the White Sox had lost 19 consecutive games in which Chris Flexen had started. That was a MLB record that had been around, I believe, since 1909. And interestingly enough, in those games, he hadn't actually pitched all that terribly, and a lot of them. Now, he only made it through 6 innings, and a couple of those, I think it was 4 of the 19 before they snapped that. Let me pull up the numbers for him here. So in that stretch that they had lost these almost 20 consecutive games. So actually, no, they had lost 20 consecutive games in which he had started. So that set the new record. And that record was set back in 1909. So they lost 20 consecutive games in which he had started. He finally snapped that streak against the Red Sox. But in that 20-game stretch, he was only allowing an average of 3.14 runs per start. He gave up 66 runs. Of those, 59 were earned. So not great, obviously, what you're going to get with Chris Flexen. I mean, the 5.26 ERA kind of speaks for itself. But I thought that was just kind of funny. One of his creation moves just set a record. 20 consecutive losses when Chris Flexen took the ball. But back to our initial point here. He's added all these guys. And the few that have worked out, I think you could argue Fetty worked out well. They added Tommy Pham. That worked out well for a little bit. But even in those trades, he didn't do all that great in the trade. Now, it's still early returns for some of the prospects they got, but the one guy's out for the season with an injury. Miguel Vargas has looked absolutely horrible. I mean, he doesn't even look like he wants to be here. I don't blame him. But dude, you're getting your MLB opportunity. Quit moping around on the bench and look like you give a damn, because he doesn't. It's one thing to be struggling, but if you look like you're trying, that's fine. I ripped on Moncada for that all the time. I always thought Moncada had the talent, and I think Vargas probably has some talent too. But if you're going to be struggling, at least have better body language. The body language on the bench is terrible. I get it. You don't want to be here, but we don't need to, don't show everyone that. We got Andy in the chat. Thanks for hopping on, Andy. Fetty worked out because of the work he put in. Getz got lucky on that. Yeah, and a lot of it happened because it was Brian Bannister. They were working with him over the offseason. And to your point, he completely overhauled his repertoire when he went to the KBO, added that new little sinker, and he kind of overhauled his changeup a little bit with the split finger change. That was Getz totally got lucky there, and I don't think he was intending on flipping him. I think they just wanted a cheap starter because they didn't have a huge budget to work with because of Reinsdorf, and that was one of the best. All right, hey, let's take a flyer on this guy. Oh, wait, he's doing pretty good. He's got one of the best WARs in the MLB. Hey, let's turn a quick profit and pawn him off. And in doing so, you trade Fetty, who had a pretty big market because a lot of teams could afford a pitcher like Fetty, and then you throw in Kopech for pennies on the dollar, and this is the result. So I don't want to hear you complaining about the deck you were dealt or the cards you were dealt when you are the one controlling the fucking deck. Come on now. Even if you had inherited a bad situation, which you did, even if you were given a limited budget, take some accountability. And now he's trying to give all this hope. Oh, he pointed to the 2003 Tigers. Yeah, they lost 119 games 3 years later than the World Series. Well, what gives you any confidence that this man, after seeing all the moves he made, when he said his goal, hey, I want to improve the defense, get more athletic. Now, they don't look like an improved defense to me. That was your one goal this year. And the bar was set pretty low because you inherited a 105-loss team. You managed to make all these moves, and you made it significantly worse. I didn't think anything could be more frustrating than watching that last year's team. Because the last year's team was bad. I mean, this one is it's insane. It's insane how bad. You almost have to try to put together a roster this poorly. There's running through all these players. It's very frustrating. They had, let's see, hold on. I got to pull up. So they've set the record 14 straight at home. I pulled this. I saw this stat earlier. It was, here we go. Franchise high 62 players have been used by the White Sox this season. That was what I was looking for earlier. 34 of those have been pitchers. A big reason why is because a lot of the guys he was bringing in have sucked. That bullpen's been terrible. And it's funny, too, because a lot of these guys that leave, like Tim Hill, he's pitching pretty well for the Yankees ever since he left. It's just funny. Even the guys they do get right, like Jesse Chavez, he didn't even make the team. Now look at him with the Braves. He looks pretty damn good. So that was frustrating. It just takes some accountability. Don't say anything at all. Just give us, that. It's whatever. I mean, I don't know how you can watch this team and how they put this thing together and have any faith that they can turn this thing around quickly. Especially when you're talking about how bad the hand you got. People don't want to hear about the cards you've been dealt. I mean, we just sat through a long ass rebuild, which, by the way, you were part of the organization when they're doing that rebuild. With all these prospects coming up, they're supposed to be great and sucked ass when they got to the majors or were wildly disappointed. You had a hand in that too. And I'll be trying to point the finger elsewhere when, hey, you've been a part of this every step of the way for almost the last decade. One guy that did work out, we'll get to a little bit of positives here. And this was kind of nice because we had another debut last night, and it was Sean Burke. The White Sox lost 5-0 to the Guardians. No surprise there, but Burke, who was just called up early in the day, they threw him into the fire pretty early. And, I got to say, it was a rare feel-good moment this season. He called it after the game. He was telling MLB.com that it was one of the best days of his life. Burke got the first 2 outs pretty quickly. He struck out Bo Naylor, which, good. I mean, any White Sox fan, you remember that walk-off home run from 2022. Still can't stand that guy. Talented player, but strikes out Bo Naylor. He gets Steven Kwan to fly out. He gets a quick 2 out, so it's looking like, all right, everything's going well. But of course, in life, things usually don't work out the way you plan it. He walks a guy, and then in a true White Sox fashion, because we're trying to improve the defense, Gavin Sheets makes an error. So now all of a sudden he's got runners first and second. Then he throws a wild pitch. Runner at second gets the third. Another guy steals a base. And who comes to the plate? Jose Ramirez. So this went from being an easy 1-2-3 inning. Now, young Sean Burke, he's in a bit of a jam here. He's got runner second and third. One of the best hitters, one of the most underrated players in the MLB, Jose Ramirez at the plate. Now, a lot of people, this is a big situation because you got some adversity early. And in a high leverage situation, now there's not much juice in the White Sox ballpark this day, but this is a big moment for the kid in his debut. How did he respond? He struck out Jose Ramirez on 3 straight pitches. And that last curveball he got him, buckled him at the knees, he's flailing. It was a nice looking curveball he got. So it was good to see him, despite having some adversity. Not all that was his own doing because he would have gotten out of the inning if not for the air. But he picks his guys up. The air doesn't cost him. They go on to lose anyway. But I thought that was that was a good way. I liked the way he responded to adversity, and the stuff looked good. I mean, he made Jose Ramirez, who's a damn good player, look foolish swinging at that pitch. So that was encouraging to see. White Sox got, I believe, 15 games left. So we got one more against Cleveland coming up this afternoon in just about an hour. It's going to be Davis Martin on the hill. He's been pretty good for the Sox this year. He's 0-3, but 3.29 ERA. That's pretty solid. So maybe we pull one out there. Then we got 3 against Oakland. Then we travel on the road, which honestly, the road, we've been a lot better this year. 3 against the Angels, 3 against the Padres. Then we come back at home, play the Angels again. And then that's our final home game on the 26th. And then we got 3 against Detroit. So as we mentioned earlier, we'll kind of walk through the schedule here just to see. I don't think it's going to be a matter of if they break the new modern record for losses. It's going to be when. So there are 7 losses away. I think they lose today, despite Davis Martin being on the hill. That'll give us to 6. Then we got Oakland, 3 at home. I think you lose 2 or 3 of those. So then we're only 4 away. Then we head to Anaheim. Anaheim's also not a good team. We play a little bit better on the road. So I'll give us 1 of 2 of those. That only leaves us 2 losses away from the record. Then we head to San Diego. I think we get swept by San Diego. So we'll be 1 over the modern day record. Back at home against LA. Again, I think we take 1 and 2. So that would put us 4 over. And then we get swept at home or on the road against Detroit to end the year. That is how I think this ends. So I think not only will they break this record, they're going to set the bar pretty high and make it very tough for another team to even come close to that mark. But hey, the good news is they built a diamond out of the 78. So, we got that going for us. Jerry's trying to distract us. They're so stupid. They don't even have the stadium built up, but they just want to put a diamond there. Like, hey, remember about the new stadium? Get distracted over here. Put it in this new ballpark. It's going to be great. You can watch this AAA ball club, but you can see the skyline in the background. I don't even give a fuck. I mean, like, be honest. Like, if you're a White Sox fan, do you really care about this new stadium? Like, does that actually, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm in the minority here. But like, I saw those pictures and it just made me angry. I don't even like, yeah, honestly, Andy, this guy goes, Sox marketing should lead into it and make a commemorative pin for the record. Yeah, but I mean, that would involve, you'd have to make all those pins. That costs money. They don't want to do that. I think they barely give their season ticket holders anything, because I know a lot of these teams will give their season ticket holders stuff, like they get special gates entrance, or a discount at the concessions, which I think the White Sox already do. But sometimes before the season, they'll send you stuff. Like the Raiders had this awesome thing. It was like this kit, and you open it up, and it had the Autumn Winds Raider music, and it had a bunch of Raiders gear and whatnot in there. White Sox don't do anything like that. I think they did send out pins, but they were up for season ticket holders, but they were all misnumbered or whatever. So I don't even trust the White Sox to do that right if they're making all these commemorative pins. They got to get some bats, man. It's brutal watching this team. Brian Ramos, though, he hit his first career home run the other night. So we got that going for us too. But getting shut out against Cleveland, and then the Tuesday prior to that, they got shut out against Baltimore. Goes back to the start of the season, they're just consistently getting shut out. Just not as many people are watching, and it's sad. I've never had, and I love baseball. Baseball is my favorite sport. I've never wanted a season to end more quickly than now. If there was ever a time to go to the Premier League rules where you can relegate a team, this would be it. They are a AAA ball club. I think there's some AAA ball clubs that could probably beat them on a nightly basis. If they somehow, in these last, let's see, we got 3, 6, 7, 9, 16 games. If they got 16 games left, they got to win 8 of them. If they can somehow go 500 the rest of the way to avoid that record, I think you give Grady some serious consideration for that manager job. We talked about it last week. I don't see many people wanting to take that job, and that would be a miracle. That would be a miracle. The way this team's played, if they go 500 on these last 16 games and they avoid that record, give this man the job, because it seems like a lot of these players don't want to be there. They've all checked out. They're worn out too. There's only so many times you get a microphone stuck in your face. You can talk about how bad you are, how we're going to flush it, and, we're going to come out to win it. It's just getting repetitive. I think Nicky Lopez had something similar. He was talking about, where he's like, yeah, I feel like feel saying the thing every time. Like, these guys are out there fighting for each other. We're trying our best. It's just, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. Thanks, Chris. Sorry you got dealt the bad hand of cards. Hopefully your deck improves over the offseason. Lord knows you have no control over that as the general manager, the one executing all of these moves. I think we learned our lesson from the Rick Hahn era. Just because, I think Hahn was given a pass. Because he was really good, and you could tell with that Michigan degree, he was very good at selling you on this stuff, and he would have his catchy slangs, Tell me after the or talk to me after the parade, or I won't be sad. Whatever the fucking quote was. Yeah, so I think people bought into it, and he was given a lot more of a pass for not supplementing the rest of that roster after he did the initial part right, and he just didn't complete the project properly. I think fans have learned from that a little bit because they're all over Getz, and rightfully so. So he's being held accountable, which is good. I mean, he deserves to be held accountable after this disaster of a season that he has set us up with. And I think realistically, I mean, probably lose, barring a miracle, they probably lose 100 games again. You know, don't talk to me about the 2003 Tigers when I got no faith that you can turn this thing around. What has he done to show that he's capable of turning this thing around? Like, the Dylan Cease trade was all right, I think. The Bummer trade was predictably bad. People liked it because they just didn't like Bummer. But, like, look at the guys they've gotten back, like, most of whom were going to be DFA'd. I remember when that trade, and the only reason I bring this up, because I'm writing something for Sports Macro right now, kind of going through all of these bad offseason moves. And I was looking back at that Bummer trade and what I wrote at the time, because I had like a trade grade, and I gave it a C- at the time. I remember seeing all these people in the comments like, no, any Sox fan worth their salt. No, this is a good trade. Bummer's terrible. I'm giving it an A+. We got 5 guys back. No. Quality does not always equal quantity. That's exactly what that trade was. And, you know, we've seen it kind of with a lot of these other ones. Dylan Cease, he was waiting that long. And I mean, Thorpe looks okay. I mean, he's out for the year, though. So we'll see. But even with the VAR, like the Kopech and I'm worn out by it. There's only, how many times can we talk about how much this team sucks? Like, give us something positive to talk about. So thank you, Sean Burke, for finally giving us some positives and having a nice first start. That's encouraging. Brian Ramos got his first career home run, so that was nice. It's too bad that it was in a September game in the midst of a 100-loss season where they've lost triple digits before the start of the year. It's crazy to me. We said the stat last week, but the fact that the White Sox have had 3+ losing streaks of 10 games or more, and no other team in the MLB has even had one. Like, that tells you all you need to know. And they were also talking about, let's not forget, they were talking about in the offseason, well, the division's wide open. You know, this division, we can, it's still pretty weak. Oh, my God. Just giving these other teams bulletin board material. Which they don't even need to beat this team. But, you know, they came in, like, after, yeah, you know, we got Jerry talking about, well, I owe it to the fans to have a quick turnaround. And we're hearing about how weak the division is. Even in this weak division, you're still getting your ass kicked every night. Man. We got Chris Rocco in the chat. Mets in the 60s had 400-loss seasons, but eventually won the World Series in 69. Drafting, player development is going to help turn this team around. Need foundational pieces. That is all fine and well. But that goes back to the point. I don't trust that this guy can get the foundational pieces to turn this thing around. Like, look at their farm system the last couple of years and the players that have come up. These big prospects that we were talking about. Man's the farm director. Did it look like any of these guys were fully developed? Did any of these guys live up to their potential? And look at their drafting history, too. Now, look, I will say, I think they had a good draft this year. I like Hagen Smith. They do have some pitching in that pipeline, but they have no bats. Like, this offense, the cupboard is bare. Kiro, maybe. Ega Kiro, maybe. But he's a catcher after all, so the ceiling on an offensive catcher is pretty limited. You can't carry your offense. Montgomery has not been great. Like, let's call it what it is. You know, I'm not selling my stock on Montgomery, but to say that he's going to be a surefire guy after watching him hit this year, I mean, he still needs a little work. I mean, Jacob Gonzalez could be okay, but like, again, there's not a ton of real, like, guys you look at in that system are like, yes, he's the guy that's going to turn it around. Elko's intriguing, I guess, but I don't trust these guys in there right now to identify the personnel to turn this around quickly. And it also doesn't help. I don't think Jerry's going to give them the money once they do get to that point, because once you get all these prospects, you do this long build, you getting all these picks. Well, also, too, you should mention this year, they can't even get a top 10 pick. They're the worst team in baseball that cannot get a top 10 pick because of all the losing seasons they've had. So that's the other thing you got to factor in, too. So not only do I think they're bad at drafting, they're not going to have a good draft pick. It was literally a waste of a season because you're not going to get a top 5 pick. You're not even going to get a top 10 pick because of the way the MLB rules are set up, because you can't tank. It's not like the 60s anymore where you're incentivized for tanking. So On top of the fact that we got a lot of incompetence, or at least it looks like that in the front office, given our shady drafting track record. No bats already in the farm system, and you're already trying to trade one of the two like major league assets you have over the offseason and Garrett Crochet, who, again, if we've looked at the returns he's had the last couple of times, do we really trust him to execute that all that well? Because he's shown a lot of the moves he's made have failed. He said he wanted to get this defense better. Does the defense look any better? Like, we went through the list. Half the guys that he has acquired have been DFA'd at this point already. Like, you are so bad. The team that's about to break a new record doesn't even think, yeah, you're not good enough to be on our team. Like, that's how bad some of these guys are. Do you know how hard it is to be DFA'd by the White Sox? That's got to be a kick in the gut. So I hope, to Chris, to your point, I do, like, look, there is precedent where it's happened. I mean, look at the Royals this year. They only won 56 games last year. Now they're in the hunt for wild cards. So these turnarounds can happen, but you need smart people in place. And I think they got something. Josh Barfield seems like he might be. You know, he seems like he's pretty bright. I like Brian Bannister. I think he's done a good job developing the pitching. I think there is, there's some stuff. But, like, we already fell for this rebuild bullshit once, and I'm not going to do it again. Like, I'm not sorry if I'm a little pessimistic. That's just how it's been watching this team. So I hope we can become the Mets. Maybe in the 60s Mets, miracle Mets. But it's going to take a whole of a lot more than a miracle to right this ship. That's all I got for you this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. I know it's been a train wreck of the season. There's not really a ton to talk about, unfortunately, at this point. Poor Shy Sox fan Mike, he writes for us too. He does a great job. You can check out his work, sportsmockery.com. He's talking about, he's like, man, like, this point in the season, like, I don't know what to write about. Like, there is. Like, it's just, there's only so many times. That's what makes it so tough. And I love baseball. I love writing about the White Sox. Like, the fact that Sports Mockery pays me to do it, like, cherry on top. But, like, it's getting to the point, there's only so many times you can write that this team sucks. Like, it is tough to find any sort of positives for this team or any sort of interesting angle, because most of the people have just checked out. And I don't blame them. We got the Bears, who, I mean, Caleb Williams, shaky debut, but I'm not selling my stock on him either. It's happened. He's a rookie, but they look like they got a pretty good team. Why would I care about the White Sox? College football is underway. Huge upset for NIU. Why would anyone care if everyone's checked out? And I don't blame them. The White Sox going to lose the few fans they have very quickly. Very, very quickly. They keep treating them like this and putting these crappy products out on the field and expecting people to pay money to watch it. So anyway, we'll be back next week at noon. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your week.